They hit Mr. Harper over the head, beat him, and still wouldn't tell him anything, didn't have anything to say. Eventually shot him. The daughter, this is according to Carolyn Brown Hampton, who says she was there. They killed her too. Then they drug him down the hill, covered him up with brush. And of course, it was cops. And she named 3 people she said were with her. And she told a pretty convincing story because she was able to describe actions that seemed to fit the interior of the Harper home, what the cemetery looked like. Really been proud of myself, I think I can talk it out. No. At any rate, she talked about a certain tombstone, a little boy named Melvin Johnson. Said when they hit Mr. Harper, and he landed, his head landed against Melvin Johnson's tombstone. Well, in this cemetery, there's a little boy named Melvin Johnson. So I do not know about the guilt or innocence of the 3 men. But I do know she was accurate in her description of what happened. Well, of course, the husband of the daughter was going crazy, wondering about his wife. And the other children of Mr. Harper were wondering about, what's going to happen? Nobody's ever found them. Well, they found the glasses in this cemetery. Right about over there is where the drive starts. This is about less than half a mile from Shady Cliff. So they started searching and searching because they found glasses, pieces of an ink pen. They found Mr. Harper's billfold on the road to Russellville where it had been tossed out. So they went back and they combed and they got a big search party. This is about 3 months after the murder, or the kidnapping. And they walked further and further, and they walked down a hill and covered up under some boards and some brush, they found their bodies. Both shot, and of course that was a terrible thing. Then you get into the trial, and they had these guys brought in. Carolyn Brown Hampton was called as a prosecution witness. She had a terrible reputation with men, with alcohol, with drugs, and she had lied a bunch of times in other cases about other things. And so more or less her testimony was impeached. She was not a credible witness. So the jury could not come to a conclusion as to whether these 3 men were guilty. So it's been a mystery ever since. Okay? I'm not going to say what I think. Some of them are still alive. I do not know. Mr. Levin died last year. Mr. Allman is still living. I don't know about Mr. Hardy. But I've done a little bit of investigation. Went to the Martin Cemetery. Give me a quick here. Melvin Johnson's tombstone. Mr. Harper's head lay right there. See, that's the kind of stuff I like to do, is go find what they say. And this is beautiful last fall. Like Mr. Bob Atkins, because I took him back, he and Judy, with me. And it was last October, I think. It was beautiful weather. And Bob took the pictures, and he kindly let me use them. They're up there. Never mind, they're copyrighted. Okay, let's see what, since I don't have an okay. This is the edge of the cemetery. This is the fence, cemetery fence. So I stood here and took this picture because in the book it talks about, they looked and looked and they went down a draw, as the old people say, and found the bodies down there somewhere. So I thought, so I was looking, Steve said, what are you doing, what are you doing? I said, just leave me alone, let me think of it. So I took that picture wondering if this was the valley, or if this was the valley. See the house right there? I said, well, let's drive down the road. Let me knock a door, because these people live here. If you want to know, if you're looking for something and you have local people that had lived there for a while, they know it more than anybody. He said, you know those people? I said, no, I've never been on this road. We drove down there and I pulled in the driveway, got out and knocked on the door, and the lady came to the door. I told her who I was and what I was up to, and she said, yeah, people stop there every now and then wondering about that. And I said, ma'am, do you know where the bodies were found? She said, yeah, and the reason I do is because, and he's in this book, and like I say, I'm not as fluent as I am about the heart. So, one of the main detectives, he brought a forensics class out there. He was on this case. He was on the main detective in the case. He brought a forensics class out there to show them how to gather evidence for crimes and so forth. And part of this class was taking them to the site where the bodies were found. She said it was right back here. It led me back there. And I make it a point now when I go places like that to have a GPS unit. So I took my little book, wrote down my coordinates, and now I'll always be able to go there. And if you think about it, any site that you're interested in, old home place, somebody's grave, an old building's going to be torn down or whatever, if you get the GPS coordinates, it's recorded forever. Because if it's torn down, if it's whatever happens to it, you've got the exact site. So it's a great tool to use. Now, those of you that were here this morning when I talked about the harps and Harp's Head and Shorty Watson and down there, and he showed me where the rock was. About 2 or 3 years later, I went down and got Shorty again and took him back up to where he grew up, and I had a tape with me. I made him hold one end, and I held the other. And I measured from the house that's there now to the tree here and the tree over here, and wrote down all my dimensions, and he said, the rock was right there. So I wrote all that down in a book, which I've still got. Today, I just GPS it. But that other way is accurate also. Especially when Shorty was saying, he's right there behind the boat, and I can measure that spot. So I retrieved and did a bunch of stuff too. Put red dots on. Because that helps me. Right here is Lake Malone. So Chevy Cliff is right in here. 431 comes down, goes through Dunmore, flies down to Muhlenberg. You can turn right and come down to Chevy Cliff. If you keep going, it takes you to Lewisburg. On there into Russellville. Steve and I came down here in 8, came up here, got on Peach Orchard Road. As soon as you turn right on Peach Orchard Road, you come to that cemetery. Okay? The little red dot, see if I can break it real quick, man. We just got this. I don't need to do that. That little red dot is where the bodies were found. As close as I can mark it on this map. That red dot represents the location of the home in Lewisburg. Where they taken that from, taken up here and killed. The body's found there. That's not a railroad track. That's my way to let you know how to go on the track. Quality in Butler County. That is where they are buried. I would find all those places if I could. Okay, down to it.
Did they find any blood on that headstone, that little boy's headstone? When they...
It's not in the book if they did. Don't know. So, drove to Quality. Found Mr. Harper, his wife, who died 2 years. It's in the Quality Baptist Church Cemetery. Quality is a little community, but as you go through it, from Muhlenberg, it's on the far side, on the west. I shouldn't tell this on, but I'm going to. When we got there, and I pulled in the cemetery, I said, because we had stopped at Price Funeral Home in Lewisburg, because I want to know where these people were buried. And Steve will talk to us about funeral homes. But anyway, so he told me there at the Lewisburg Baptist Church Cemetery. So, I mean, Quality. So we drove across the country to Quality in Butler County found the church, pulled in the cemetery. He jumped out, ran up there and he said, I found them right here, which is fine. But anyway, Mr. Harper, you know, December 11th, 1965 is when he was killed. L.A.M., his daughter, December 11th, 1965. That's the daughter. The saddest story to me is Eustace Gibbons, her husband. He lost his wife in 1965. Nobody was ever convicted of her murder. He lived till 2009. He was 99 years old when he died. On my birthday. 99 years old, and he lived 45 years after her death. And he was bitter the rest of his life because there was no closure, there was no resolution. And it's sad that you can go there today and see these stuff. Okay, honey.
I have a heavy foot.
Yeah. Whoever this was taking this picture should have shined their shoes up a little bit.
It's just evidence that you've been in a cemetery.
Yeah. One day, not too many months ago, I was checking the obituary to see if anybody needed a tombstone to die. And I saw James Taylor Levy. Rang the bell. Said, so-and-so, funeral home, blah, blah, blah. And Oakwood Cemetery, that's in Arlington. I used to know all about that. So I wanted to find him, just because I like to connect all the dots if I could. So I drove to Oakwood Cemetery and looked around, never could figure it out. I drove to Arlington City Hall and went in there and asked the lady if she had the plat for the cemetery. She said, yeah, we looked at it. So I told her, well, I know we have a Willie Levin. So she told me where it was. I went out and I got myself, and got my car, and the only way down to Oakwood, phone rang. Hello, Mr. Bradley. It was Steve Rudd. What are you doing? Well, actually, I'll be there in a minute. So, I was walking back to Willie Levin's plot. This is right over here. And I got lucky. So I didn't know he was there. But I thought, maybe that's his dad or something. It's supposed to be Oakwood. He's 11. So I walked back there and here was Willie and his wife. And Steve said, well, you're wrong this time. He's nowhere to be found. And out of the corner of my eye to the right, I saw this stone. So I walked over to and Steve, what he likes to kid around with me when I do something like that, he'll go. Well, anyway, I found that stone and took that picture. And then even luckier, if this stone right here, and I'm walking out of the cemetery, you remember, walk about 2 rows, and right there on the left, click, there's Mr. Almond. Now let's just look. Mr. Almond is still living. His wife is James Taylor Levin's sister. Alfred Friendly Harvey, I do not know where he is, whether he's living or dead. I have no idea about guilt or innocence. A couple years ago, I saw an obituary in the paper in Webster County, Melton Funeral Home, Carolyn Brown. Ding. So I called Melton Funeral Home last week, told them, and in the book it gives her father's name. Because they went